Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, Season 4 of Diablo 4 is very much well underway at this point, with a large number of people reaching the proper endgame at this stage, far more people hitting it at much quicker rates than we've ever had before, and part of this is leading to an increase in boss summon materials existing just due to a larger endgame player base than normal, which also leads to a much more active community for this activity. And the reason most people engage with the boss ladder on repeat is quite simple: uber uniques. These are some of the strongest items in the game, depending on your build, of course, and the number of them are pretty major game changers that can even make whole new builds viable to begin with. This season, more than ever, it is easier to get uber uniques, and not just easier to get them, but also easy to get a minimum of one of your own choice through the Resplendent Spark system. But the real trick is you can actually forcibly gain sparks without considering luck in the slightest as an option, as long as you want to put some decent time into it. So today we are going to very simply go over how to maximize your chances of getting uber uniques as quickly as you possibly can, the bosses that you want to aim for specifically, the value of the torment versions of them versus the normal versions, the best way to get their particular materials as well, and we'll start off first by talking about the sources of guaranteed resplendent sparks this season, at least one of which is actually repeatable to get infinite sparks, at least technically speaking. The first guaranteed spark each season is from killing any of the boss ladder bosses in their torment version, the level 200 fight. The first time that you kill a torment boss, you get a spark, so do it at least once. The second guaranteed spark is supposed to be from the Echo of Lilith boss fight, which was buffed this season, but there is a bit of a bug causing this to not drop resplendent sparks for all players, and this is being looked into by the developers currently. The third guaranteed source is the very end of the reputation track for the Call of the Wolves seasonal activity. The final cache contains a single resplendent spark. The reason this is specifically interesting is because this reputation track is specific to each character, but your actual currency and material inventory, which includes things like resplendent sparks, is account wide. In other words, if you make another character, you can then farm the Iron Wolves reputation once again and gain another guaranteed resplendent spark, and you can do that once per character, and this can still be used on your original character. You can do it multiple times, and then you've got another guaranteed uber unique. Of course, there is the caveat that for an average player, doing that solo, you would probably take about 10 hours on an alt, even with the infusion of gear from your main, so for most people, it's not really worth the time over just, farming Duriel or Andariel on your main character during that same 10-hour period. But hey, if you want an alt anyways, it's an extremely smart way to double up. And you could also argue it's the best way to get the Stygian stones, which are the material required to do the torment versions of the boss ladder bosses, as right now the drop rate on Stygian stones seems to be incredibly low from their intended sources, which are the world bosses and the pit, but you get a handful of them guaranteed from the last couple of caches on the reputation track, so there is that to consider too. If you did want to do this, you would just level a character from 1 through Helltide all the way up to 100, and once you are strong enough, around level 30-ish or so, you can start using Profane Mind Cages to boost the enemy's level, so your experience gain gets boosted as well, and also it boosts your Cinder drop rate because the actual chests in Helltide are an extremely good source of reputation gain, with the other main thing that I found being the Blood Maidens, the actual altar event. So basically, focus the altar events once you are strong enough to do so, Profane Mind Veil for the level increase if you are still strong enough to do that, even with it, and then spend all of your Cinders on chests for more reputation past that. World Tier 1 and 2, you don't really have a choice of the chests, of course, but on 3 and 4, you have 75 cost chests that are worth 60 reputation, 150 cost chests are worth 120 reputation, and 250 cost or above is worth 180 reputation. So if you purely care about the reputation gain from the chest choices, amulets and light weapons are a complete waste of Cinders comparatively, as is the Living Steel chest, as these simply don't give you more reputation, even though they cost more Cinders than the chests that give the same amount. Past that, it comes to the more specific boss materials, so let's talk about the bosses that you actually want to target first for this. Duriel and Andariel have the highest uber unique drop rates in the game, though it's worth noting that the other boss ladder bosses too do have an increased uber unique chance as well, just much less so. Also, it should include here that uber unique drop rates in general have been increased in the overworld across the board, so that 1 in around 8,000 uniques that drop will be an uber unique no matter what, if I'm not mistaken, but that's still just super low compared to just fighting these two bosses specifically. As for whether you want to fight Duriel or Andariel, the choice between them, the answer is generally both. They have the exact same drop table and the loot chances when it comes to gear at least, and this is a higher chance than the lesser ladder bosses, so these two are the ones you want to focus for, always aim for them. If you, for whatever reason have to choose between doing one or the other, choose Duriel. He's just an easier boss to fight for the same reward chance. Simple as that. He has more health, sure, but easier mechanics and less movement requirement than Andariel, which are both things that can really mess with some classes. Here also seems like a good time to talk about their stack applying torment moves. These are telegraphed attacks that apply a stack to you that increases your damage taken, and these stack exponentially each time you are hit, so avoiding taking these damage hits is the only way to kill these bosses, at least until your own damage is high enough to just obliterate them before the stacks become a problem. All that said, let's talk about how best to get and how best to use the materials for summoning these bosses. For Duriel, you need shards and eggs. Shards come from killing Grigoire, who is summoned with living steel, and that is best farmed from Helltide. Eggs come from killing Varshan, who is summoned with the various malignant body parts, which are best farmed from Whispers of the Dead. You can do Whispers during Helltide to double this up super effectively, and so if you are looking for literally the most of either Duriel and Andariel per time spent actively farming materials, this is the way to do it, just completing Whispers while doing Helltide. For Andariel, you need shackles and dolls. Shackles come from Lord Zir, who is summoned with exquisite blood, which mostly comes from Legion events, as well as actually the Hellborn enemies in Helltide seem to drop this a fair amount too. Dolls come from Beast and Ice, who is summoned with Distilled Fear and Sigil Powder, which are rewards at the end of every Nightmare dungeon above tier 30. All of these materials have a chance of dropping from world bosses as well, even the upgraded versions of them. From any elite in the game, you can get the lesser ones, and from loot goblins as well. Then the final material is Stygian stones. These are required to make torment versions of bosses. The best ways to get these are world bosses, which seem to have the highest drop rates. High tier pit has occasional drops, but it's just not really dropping all that much. But as mentioned earlier, you get a load of them in the Call of the Wolves reputation activity caches from the final couple of them, and you can also get some from the Season Journey 2, I believe. With that said, the final question here is how valuable are the torment versions of bosses, and when should you start doing them over the normal ones? Well, to put it simply, a group that can kill regular Duriel in about 10 seconds can still take upwards of a couple of minutes to kill Uber Duriel, if they can even do it, because the main requirement is, again, avoiding getting the stacks. Realistically, if you have literally infinite materials, it is more effective to do regular Duriel over and over, unless you can reach the point of killing Torment Duriel in about 1 minute flat, just based on the pure loading screen times, things like that, because the Torment bosses have 5 times the reward drops of the regular bosses. That said, there are just other things to consider in this equation as well. For example, as I mentioned, Andariel seems to have less health than Duriel, which means that you could kill it faster, but also there is the fact that these bosses are 5 times reward compared to the normal version, and only come at the cost of spending 3 times the normal amount of summoned materials and, the Stygian zones. So value-wise, it is actually always worth doing the Torment ones, as long as you are physically strong enough to actually kill them, because materials are the main bottleneck for most of us, so making the most out of your materials is the best thing you can do. On top of that, this is more of a feely craft thing, but most players, myself included, have just noticed far higher item rarity from things dropped at the end of a Torment version of the bosses, not just literally 5 times the amount of loot, but genuinely better loot quality as well. Personally, I have had 2 Uber Uniques drop naturally this season. Both of them were Andariel's Visage, and both of them came from Torment Duriel. At this point, I have done quite a number more regular Duriels than Torment Duriel, same with Andariel too, honestly, but both of my Uber Uniques have come from the Torment versions. It's not a hard rule there, of course, but it is a consideration, a thing to think about that might be a coincidence, or it could mean something greater. Then the final tip I have in regards to all this is quite simple. It is boss rotations. If you are a mostly solo player, this is an activity that is simply done better in groups. Either use in-game chat or join our own Discord down in the description below if you're looking for people to group with for this. And the concept of a boss rotation, for those who haven't done it before, is very simply each member of the group rotates using their materials to summon the boss that you all want to kill. By doing this, each of you gets 4 boss kills for only 1 stack of your own materials, making it just far more efficient for every single person involved. And that just about does it for today then, everyone. Everything related to Uber Uniques this season, the various ways of getting them, the ways of getting sparks, including the silly things that you can do with ults right now, the sort of balance of when tormented bosses are or maybe aren't worth it depending on your material situation, and just how to get all of the materials to make this all function relatively smoothly, because it's just the easiest season it's ever been to have Uber Uniques, and not even just one, but plural Uber Uniques. So let's all just get collecting these lovely little overpowered beauties. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.